Here we are, after hiatus, back on the Ultimate Sports Network. Everybody keep moving your head because they have no idea what's going on, and now I just blanked out.
We can still hear you, though, so keep going.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, well, since... And I'll throw it to John. John, what's been happening since we've been gone?
Oh, lots of stuff. Off air, I think the most important thing was Charles' main man. You know, Chocolatito fought Estrada in a rematch, and it was a hell of a fight. It was competitive. Chocolatito at 33 doing things that little men aren't supposed to do, which is continue to fight at a certain level like he is, and coming back, as we've talked about numerous times on the show. And he brings that momentum, or whatever you want to call it, into this fight with Estrada, who he had defeated in 2012. And in my view, defeats him again, but doesn't get the decision. And as you said, Charles, that 117-111 score was absolutely ridiculous. And you know what? I was thinking about as a fighter. I mean, Gonzalez is a really nice guy, but you know, you and me, we've talked about it. We're both competitive. I mean, that would be hard to fight that hard like that and lose a fight you thought you won and then come back. You know what I mean? That you might be just like Marvin Hagler, the late Marvin Hagler, and go, you know, that's it. I'm disgusted. I can't, forget this. You know what I mean? So the third fight is in the talks right now, but I mean, you saw the same thing as me, right? You had Gonzalez winning.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, and that was the thing, too. We talked about it off air as well, is that watching Gonzalez, he was always more the aggressor, right? Estrada fight a better fight than I thought he would, and he had moments, but Gonzalez he was constant with his combinations. He was always first, and it always seems as if Estrada was trying to come back from something. You know, it's like you're trying to recover from punches, or your folks telling you you're behind, or you're just trying to stay up with him. And there's not much he could do. When Chocolatito was ready to move forward and hit him with some combinations and always be busy, hitting him in the body, hitting him inside the head with his hooks and whatnot, he clearly was the aggressor. And I think that Chocolatito's punches had more of an impact throughout. And with that being said, I think that's where it went to. A lot of people don't understand that. And even to the point where, what was the last couple rounds, where Estrada's people told him, you need a knockout. They told him that. His corner said that. So hell, if your corner said that, how the hell can a judge call him 117?
I don't know. I don't know. See, in the way I saw it too, Charles, is Estrada started fast in the beginning, but then Chocolatito warmed up. And then he did what supposedly always wins fights for guys, is he finished stronger than Estrada. You know, he won the last few rounds pretty convincingly, even though Estrada was trying to knock him out. Like you said, his corners. So that was it. I mean, as far as I was concerned, the decision was cemented. I mean, it was close. I think I had it 115 to 113, but I certainly could see 116 to 112 or whatever. But 117 to 111?
Right.
I shake my head a lot at judging, but you know, you always wonder, what the hell is that?
Yeah. Well, see, and that's where you get to the situation where, you know, when there's that kind of disparity, something isn't right. Not saying conspiracy theory or anything like that, but something just isn't right, because someone saw something that not only you guys didn't see, but the other judges didn't see. So can we keep that from happening? I know they suspended the judge that was out of sync, but what in the world do you do?
Wow.
Charles, go ahead.
Well, I think that part of it is you just have to really go back and look at the refs' last couple of fights, right, and see what they did. I mean, it's like anything else. You have to, it's kind of like a report card. You can always warn them, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, but their actions are going to be the things that speak volumes, right? You can only go off of that. You can always tell them the rules. We don't want to see this, don't do this, don't judge this, don't judge that. But judges see what they see. So I would look at somebody that would be involved, that has had great success at a higher level of fights, that is, And let's be real, fighting like this, particularly when this rematch was major, there are a lot of belts on the line. It's like the Super Bowl. Everybody can't ref the Super Bowl, right?
Right.
So there should be a group of individuals that are prepared to see things a certain way. And I know that might be a bit much as far as what boxing wants to do, but I think it would serve the boxers well to have that type of situation or type of organization when it comes to your referees.
Well, it reminds me of, and John, you're going to have to make sure I have the right one, was it the Jason Maloney fight? Where it ended in the first round or at the beginning of the second round that was in the bubble, where they took them 40 minutes to look at the replay to see if the cut had been caused by whatever. Like, okay, if they're looking at the same footage that we're looking at, because that's what they said they were looking at, what are you people looking at? And then they still made the decision against Maloney. I'm like, okay, I can see if we didn't see it initially because we're looking at a monitor, but they're looking at the same monitor. It would be different, and you've been at ringside, you've both been at ringside of a fight where you're seeing something different than what I'm seeing on TV. You're seeing it scored different, you're seeing the pressure differently, you're seeing what, the effects of the punches, but they were making the same judgment from the monitor and got it. They ran it 147 times, so how they got it wrong, I don't know. But the correlation to that here is you've got two other judges and the people who watch it on TV that see it a completely different way than what this judge saw. And I don't want to keep belaboring that, but that was just, when it's that unequal, it's like, what in the heck? John, have you ever seen anything that has been that far off before?
Oh yeah. Lots of times. And that's what's so frustrating about boxing judging is you this isn't normal, but it isn't abnormal. It isn't an anomaly, which is also so aggravating, and you have a hard time understanding it because you're thinking you're watching the same thing I'm watching, just like you said, Frank. How could you possibly go? It was like when Canelo when Mayweather won a split decision over Canelo. It was like, what?
Yeah, what were you guys thinking, right?
You're like, Mayweather, with watching with one eye, if I was like this, he won like 9 or 10 rounds, if I remember correctly.
Right.
You're like, you can't help it, your brain starts to go, is somebody on the take here? Is somebody trying to not embarrass somebody? I mean, that loss to Mayweather was the best thing that ever happened to Canelo.
Yeah,
he learned so much in that fight.
Right.
Yeah, he learned so much in that fight. Then you get this where I like what Charles said, because that's what they're supposed to do is when you get two champions, you're supposed to have, like the Super Bowl, right? They have the best officials work the Super Bowl that work the whole season. They grade them, from what I understand.
Right.
But the best ones. That's what you should do. The little guys don't get the same respect as the big guys, but when you got a fight that's this important, you should make sure that the judges are what you hope are top-notch based on their previous fights, where they will hopefully get it right. But I remember Paul Williams and Lara fought years ago, and that one was like, I'm like, well, Lara won easy, and Williams won the fight. I'm like, so that one's the one that always sticks in my mind because that was a robbery. And what happened to Maloney? That was a robbery in my mind. I don't care what anybody says. It was like they were trying everything they could to not embarrass somebody, the referee.
Yeah.
It's like, excuse my French, I won't say it, Frank, because this is a very G-rated show. F that! The guy gets it wrong, he gets it wrong. We're all human. Nobody would have been mad at him. He didn't see it.
Right.
He thought he saw something that he didn't see. I mean, how many times you talk about live fights real fast? I'll be watching the fight, and I'll look down for a second, I'll look up, and then something happened, and I just blinked, and I looked at someone else. Was that a left hook? And they'll go, no, that was a right hand. That's how it happens sometimes. So nobody would have been mad if they overturned what the referee thought. Everyone would have said, okay, you got it right. Instead, they compound it, make it worse, and make boxing a laughingstock again. It's crazy.
Well, we get into the whole concept of instant replay and all these things we're getting in all these other sports that sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. My brother rails on baseball. They have the little box right there. Why can't they argue balls and strikes? Well, because that would interrupt the integrity of the game. He said, screw that. And since my name does have a G in it, I will use the language that I want to use. Thank you very much. But it's the idea, this is my G rating. But it's the idea of if you're going to use it, use it. If you're not going to use it, don't. And you've got CompuBox, you've got this, you've got that. How does one get it so far off? And as we talked to Max DeLuca, and I wish I would have kept the rest of the interview that we did off air, he said that part of what they do afterwards is the judges either the governing body will or the judges themselves will take a look at their scores and go, we should be pretty much close. We may have had a round or two different here, but we should be close. So if it's 115, 113 by two guys, how did this guy see 117, 111? He said they may even go out afterwards and get dinner or something and go, wait a second, what were you seeing?
Right.
So that's the thing. I hope they dragged this guy out with them and said, dude, what were you thinking? Or maybe you should have seen this the way that I saw it. Maybe that's the case. I don't know, but it just seems a little ridiculous. Now, it's funny. Go right ahead.
I want to really talk about, because we're talking about this, but I also want to talk about that Maloney situation. I think that one of the things that from a media standpoint, and having been part of the media before, I think ESPN did themselves a major disservice, and people may not agree with this. You should not have shown that replay as much as they did, particularly when in the end, when everybody saw you got it wrong.
Right.
Okay. What people don't see, they don't pay attention to. But when you show them, like you said, 147 times, and you still get it wrong, it's kind of like when you go to they go to New York for the replays of football or wherever they go, and everybody's watching these things and they still get it wrong, and it's like, how in the hell you know that they have better equipment than we do, right?
You would hope, right?
Well, I'm watching on my TV or I'm watching on the computer, and you have these large screens that you spend all this astronomical amount of money on, and you got it wrong, and they kept showing it over and over and over. And you're like, okay, well, they got it, right? We all see it, and they still got it wrong. You're like,
come on. Well,
somebody's in trouble, because it's like, damn, how you missed that? And they look stupid.
And then real quick, Frank, the three commentators, Andre Ward and Bradley and Tessitore are all going, well, the referee missed it. They're all in agreement.
Yeah.
And then I remember thinking, the longer they take,
right,
you knew that, I don't want to say the fix was in, but you knew that it wasn't going to go the way it should. I don't know. It just, I was saying that to my layers, going, they're taking too long here. Because it didn't need to take that long. It was a 5-minute thing, tops. It took like 45 minutes.
Yeah, right.
But you know what the part of it really that got me too, though, is you go through all, like as you mentioned, and you take it too long, but then they had the power to overturn it.
Right.
They said they could overturn it. And that was like, come on, man. You had our power to overturn it. Yeah, you're going to get clowned because somebody made a mistake. But when everybody else knows that it was a mistake, let's say, hey, he made a mistake. I don't know if he had too much vodka, too much gin, whatever it is. We're going to clean up because
not enough juice, yeah.
For the sake of boxing, for the sake of all humanity and who's watching, we're going to get this right. That's supposed to be the purpose of any replay.
Well, during that, before it got too far along, Tim Bradley's like, they're going to screw him. And Andre Ward's like, just settle down, pump the brakes, just wait. Let's see what happens so they get it right. And then when they got it wrong, Bradley's like, see, I told you. I
was thinking the same thing as Bradley. Yeah. Andre was trying to say, let's wait. He was doing like that. He was saying, but Bradley was like, nope.
We are respectable journalists here. Let's be as neutral as possible. And Bradley's like, screw you. This is what happened, right?
That's right.
Right. To Charles, to your okay, so you're in Jerry World in Irving, Texas, or wherever the hell the stadium's out, Arlington, whatever it is, and a play gets called questionably. Mm-hmm. And 50,000 fans, when there are 50,000 fans in the stadium, look up on a big screen TV as big as, most buildings, right, and they see the play, and they run it 4 or 5 times. The players are looking at it. The coaches are looking at it. The owners are looking at it. The garbage workers from across the street are looking at it. Everybody can see the play. And the little officials are underneath the hood looking on a screen this big, and they go, nope, we got it right. It's like everyone else sees it got reversed. What in the heck? So like you said, this is the thing where you're looking at what happened. What did you guys come up with? I don't know.
But let's throw this in there though. But in New York, when you had that replay like you mentioned in the NFL, so the referee's in the booth, he's looking at it on this little screen, but then he refers back to New York for
right,
clarification.
Right.
They got the biggest damn TVs known to man, and they still get it wrong.
Right. They've got an array and all the different angles and all that, and they still blow it. So, all right. Well, you made me think of something that you brought up a name, John, that made me think of something that I've been thinking of for a while, and we're going to get back and forth because we've got a lot to cover because we missed a lot. But think of just one. It could be several, but think of one fighter who you thought had the goods, and then when they moved up in class, didn't have the goods. Because you mentioned the name, and I'll get back to that in a second. But we're talking like, for example, Chocolatito. Okay, and you're fighting for this, and now not only are you a name now, but you're also a veteran, and you got kind of job. Where do you go from there? How many people have stepped up? We mentioned Ricky Hatton a few weeks ago when we were on the show that came to America and then got blasted out twice. Were they really that good? Name a guy or two or three just off the top of your head that you went, I really thought this guy had the goods, and then when he stepped up in class, we were wrong. John, you go first because Charles is still frozen out the bottom there. Oh, he's acting. I see.
Was that? I'll say.
Okay.
I think that was for me, right, Charles?
Yeah.
I remember when Tommy the Duke Morrison fought Ray Mercer. I thought that he beat Mercer in the amateurs. So I thought this is a kid that might go all the way, but he was definitely good, and I thought he had enough to beat Mercer. And he looked, I don't know if anybody remembers this, but he looked great for 3 rounds. He looked great. And then he got hit with a right-handed or something at the end of the 3rd round, and then, as we all know, he got knocked out brutally. And that was one that pops into my old brain that was kind of a shocker. I'm trying to think. Sometimes it's a misnomer, because some guys you'll think they're really good, and then they move up and get knocked out, and then they recover and come back, and they are about as good as you thought. They just ran into something that you didn't expect. Think of Josh Warrington. We were just talking about him.
Right.
He's undefeated. He's swaggering into the ring. He hadn't fought in a while. He fights a tough Mexican. And the thing about him was it had taken me a while to go, well, okay, he is. I wasn't impressed with him for the longest time. He beat Frampton, I was impressed. Then he looked better and better. And then he fights this tough Mexican and gets brutally knocked out. And you go, okay, was I wrong did I have him up too high? Or did I have the Mexican fighter too low? Or so that's the thing, is it's somewhere in the middle sometimes. You
Right.
You don't know. Heavyweights, it happens with real fast. It happens with heavyweights quite a bit. But you think they're pretty good. Like okay, let's talk about Anthony Joshua. Now, I was never totally sold on him, but that didn't mean I was walking around telling everybody that Andy Ruiz was going to knock him out in 7 rounds.
Exactly.
So that's the thing. You don't really know, because it's like most of the time it's like a combination. And the biggest example, Frank, is we watched the rematch was when Joe Louis fought Max Schmeling. Nobody thought Max Schmeling was going to knock out Joe Louis, and he brutally knocked him out in 12.
Right.
So but then we know what happened 2 years later.
Right.
When they step up, and let me do a quick segue like you like to do. That's what happened sort of with Vergil Ortiz over the weekend, and this is a good segue.
Right.
He stepped up, fought
Maurice Hooker.
Right, and Maurice Hooker, right, Mo Hooker, and that was a big step up for him. And he looked real good. I mean, I thought he looked really good, to be honest. He said he had an injury later and all this, but he's the real deal as far as I'm concerned. I've been writing on something about him because I was that impressed. But he did it. He came through. But that's what always makes it intriguing when a guy steps up. It's that drama part about boxing. You really can't predict sometimes what's going to happen.
Well, you stole my segue. Thank you very much.
Sorry.
But that was where I was going to try and get to all this, because we were talking about fights that just happened. But we'll get to that in a minute. Charles, is there a fighter that you and I or anyone was saying, this guy's got the goods, and then he didn't?
Yeah, and I'm going to say because they tried to move up, and I think a couple guys I'm going to mention to you is they tried to move up, and they simply did not carry the power with them when they moved up. And you might be surprised by a couple of these guys. Mikey Garcia. I think Mikey Garcia is doing himself a disservice trying to fight at 147. Right. He just is. He has not proven that he can fight anybody, beat anybody at 147 that matters besides Broner. And that doesn't count either, because Broner, and he's another one. He clearly should have stayed at 140 or 135. Got his butt in shape and did what he had to do. Clearly was not 147 material because he did not have the power. Two other guys real quick. Another one would be Juan Diaz. I thought Juan Diaz was cool. Really did. I thought he was the guy. And then I had to literally go back and watch the Diaz, Marquez fight to find out that he probably peaked, right?
Yeah, that was as good as should have been, yeah.
Right.
That happens, yeah.
Yeah, and one last guy who I thought he was going to be the second coming of somebody, but a little bit too much hype, and somebody like a guy by the name of Donald Curry got in his way often, was I really believe Milt McCoy was the next great thing. I really did.
Looked like it.
Yeah, he did, and that surprised me when he couldn't come through.
Curry too, for that matter, right? Curry looked like he was going to dominate in the welterweight division, and then he goes to London and fights Lloyd Honegan, who we hadn't barely even heard of, and he gets beat. It was stunning.
Yeah. So,
Well, and along with the Juan Diaz thing, I think at that time we were also, now you weren't on the same bandwagon as I was, but just by the look of it was Paul Williams, and that's where, John, you mentioned Paul Williams. That Paul Williams was in that position where they were building him up towards something, and he was doing things that you didn't see. 6'2", 6'3", fighting at with 135. I mean, it was insane. Plus, as much as the output, the number of punches he was throwing around, insane. You thought, this guy's just going to be dominant if he can keep making weight, and then someone figured him out. Like, poof, done. You're like, wow, how did that happen? That's one that really jumps out at me. Juan Diaz was the other one I was going to say, Charles, because we just saw him just walk through people and just wear them down and impose his will on them. And the Marquez went, no, it's not happening, son. Sorry about that. As John said, sometimes you just get to a guy you can't get through. So, and see, this is where we make the segue for the Maurice Hooker-Vergil Ortiz fight. Because we've seen Maurice Hooker before. We know what he's got. We know what he brings to the table. He might be a little bit older now. But this was a true test for Ortiz, and Ortiz said, really? Was it? Is that what you thought? So, Charles, what did you think of that fight?
No, I thought it was a great fight. I'm glad two guys got together. Ortiz was wide open. I think he received advice that he maybe was stepping in over his head a little bit, but he was ready. He said, I don't care, I'm going for it. And of course, Hooker's like, you run in your mouth, whatever situation may be, I'm going to put you in your place. It was just the opposite. So with the win, Ortiz is calling out different people. He says he's going to ready to stay at 147. But I think overall he proved that he's capable of winning at that level. But he also showed, and it's natural because he's still young, right? That he showed that he's a little green in a few areas.
Oh yeah.
But that's okay. So at least he put himself in the conversation. And with that being said, I think that's great because, as you said, we've seen Hooker before. Hooker still is legitimate to fight some top-notch talent. May not be the greatest in that level when we think about 147 now, but he's damn sure in that second tier. I think he would be able to kind of put in the same area as Danny Garcia or somebody like that, right?
Okay, right.
So, hey, I think he's okay there. But yeah, I think just Ortiz just put himself in the conversation. We'll just see what happens with that conversation now. But he's definitely in the building.
Well, John, is there room for another guy in that mix, or someone's got to fight somebody at some point, don't they?
The whole thing is so maddening. You know what? Ortiz said, and I don't think he's obviously ready for Terrence Crawford, but I like the fact that he said he wants to fight him. He said he wants to fight the best. And even he made a comment that he wasn't sure he's ready for Terrence Crawford, but he still wants to fight him. So that's good. He wants to fight the best guys. The frustrating part is that the fight between Errol Spence and Crawford seems dead.
Yeah.
And that's crazy. And I don't know who I want to blame. I think part of me, more of me, wants to blame Errol Spence because he kept raising the bar up. You know, he said 60-40, 70-30, and he got mad and said, well, now it's 80-20 to Terrence. It's like, that's insulting, man. So I don't blame Terrence Crawford for being insulted about that. So I'm mad at everybody. They might end up getting together in 2 or 3 years, but it'll be too late then. You know, I mean, I want them to get together now, and yeah, there's room. There's always room for more talent, Frank, because the guys are getting older. You know, think about it. Our favorite guy, Sean Porter's getting old. He's over 30. Spence is 30, 31. Terrence Crawford is 33, almost 34. So you got the young hotshots coming up. That's good. You know, Josh Taylor's probably going to move up to welterweight at some point. So Ramirez too, and they're fighting in a few months. That ought to be a barn burner. Mm-hmm. So that keeps everything going. And Ortiz is 22, and then I think Teofimo's going to be a welterweight someday, and Ryan Garcia. So that's good. You know, the young guys are coming up, and the older guys are getting a little older. Crawford might move up to 154, from what I understand. Wow. But I taught Crawford for a quick little comment on Crawford. He's in a tough spot because I don't know what's going on there. I still think that Bob Arum has mismanaged him. He's treated him like he's not nearly as good as a lot of people think. I think this is just my view. Mm-hmm. It's almost like he doesn't believe that he's as good as we think. I just said that. So make the Spence fight. I don't care. It's not happening. Make something. Make the Porter fight. Porter said he'd fight him. Now Crawford's like, nah, I don't really want to fight Sean Porter because they're friends. You got to fight somebody, right? So it's the welterweight division has still got those now getting grizzled veterans, but you got the young guys there that are nipping at their heels, and to me that makes it even better.
Well, at Bob Arum, you mentioned 80-20. It sounds like we're in a grocery store and you're looking at meat going, if it's 73-20, what's the 27? What is this? Why is it not the whole amount? And that's what I'm looking at. It's like, why aren't you looking at the whole here? Because they're taking out bits and pieces, and who knows what in the world's going on. So when you say you're not going to fight this at 50-50 or 60-40 or whatever, when you start getting more and more disparity here, you're like, why are you discounting it so much? Or why discounting Terrence Crawford so much? Does Spence think that if you're worth that much, just win it in the ring? That's what I don't understand. That whole thing doesn't make any sense.
There's that.
Yes. And if I'm Bob Arum, I'm saying, hey, dude, let's just make the fight. Before it slides to the point where we're going to get 4%, let's make the fight, if that's what you want to do. Because apparently they don't want to make the fight at whatever. So when they first said 60-40, you should have jumped. Okay, we'll take it. Whatever it is, We'll take it and we'll win it in the rematch. You can be disrespected all you want, but you still, if you think you're going to fight, who cares? Get the fight. You're still going to get paid.
Yeah, no, that's true.
And then move on. So that's the part that bothers me about it, because they just don't look like they're either side looks like they want to fight and they're going to haggle. And you mentioned something, who to blame. And in our society now, that's what we have to do. We have to blame somebody instead of just saying, let's get it done. Let's just get it done. Let's not worry about who did what. Let's get it done. But they don't want to get it done. So, but speaking, and here's...
No, and real quick, Frank, that's what they used to do back in our day, was, not to sound like an old codger here, but I'm going to, is that you, as a challenger or whatever, as a lower champion, you took the lesser money because your thinking was, I don't care, I'm going to beat him.
Right.
And you're right. Crawford should have grabbed at the 60-40 and said, fine, I'll take that 20% out on his head.
Right.
Right.
You know, I mean, it was set up perfect, but he didn't, because he wants it all he can get, and he feels like he's worth it, and he is, but he wasn't in a negotiating position to do that. So I think he probably, in his private moments, probably goes,
screwed it up.
I messed up on that one. I messed up.
Take it and then charge and make it 60-40 in the rematch when you win.
Right.
You know, do it that way.
Right.
You know,
right.
And we're looking at a couple things. We're talking about rematches and all that. Povetkin and Whyte coming up. And it's been postponed. It's been this, been that. And we were talking about, is there room at the end for the welterweights? Looking at the heavyweights, is this a significant fight, or is it just, well, you're putting yourself in position to hope something happens? Charles, because I've been looking at it a couple different ways, is this a must-see fight for the fight, or is this a must-see fight for what it sets up down the road?
For what it may set up down the road, I think it's a make-or-break fight for both of these dudes, real talk. And you might think I'm crazy by saying that, but they've been dancing for a long time. And when they do come back full circle in the heavyweight division, Joshua and Fury already have a couple fights they're going to be connected with, which means that's more time. So that's another year, maybe two or whatever. Then you got Wilder, who's going to definitely get more love early on. So, you know, we've heard about Whyte forever. Whyte has been this so-called, lot of hype, a lot of whatever around him, a lot of pomp and circumstance around him, and he's never lived up to his potential. And then, of course, we got Povetkin that we know how that goes, too, back and forth. So, to me, this is their shot. The man that wins this fight is your opportunity to maybe get another fight or another shot or a real shot at the big time. The other guy is going to kind of fall down in oblivion, perhaps. He can still fight, but he may never get that shot again. And you might end up having to fight my boy Ortiz, right?
Nobody wants to fight Ortiz.
Nobody wants to fight. They keep saying whatever, so you might have to succumb down to going to that level. But no, I think right now it's their shot. So whoever takes advantage of it is going to be in the conversation. You can fight, like you said, the Ortiz of the world, or you can fight somebody else with a Ruiz who's still dropping weight and ready to move back into it. But the loser, I think, might want to find something else to do. The winner, I think, still has an opportunity. So I think it's something you want to see for down the road. Do I think it's a must-see fight? Nah, because they're taking too daggone long to put it out there. And there's always an excuse. He's on cocaine. He got a surgery problem. He broke his hand. Oh, he wasn't in shape. It's always something. It's like, nobody cares anymore.
Well, and we know it's hard to get back to the top from Bolivia or wherever it is. But somebody wrote a book like that. Anyhow, but John, the idea though is that there are more. Well, I'm thinking there are more than just 2.5 heavyweights out there. There are more than Tyson Fury, who has mentioned he's only going to do so much, fight so many more fights. Anthony Joshua, who may or may not be ready for this, and then that guy over there that should be an anger management class, Deontay Wilder, trying to figure out how he fits in the mix. Are these guys, these two, are they really important to this? Or is it just like, I guess the better question I was trying to formulate is that when we look at the big three of this, trying to figure out what's going on, is it up to them to include these other people? Or is it up to Whyte and Povetkin to weasel their way into the conversation? and Ruiz and Ortiz and everybody else.
Well, you got to remember. Okay, you got to remember the first fight was really set up for Whyte to knock out Povetkin, and that was the way it was going for 4 rounds. So Eddie Hearn had this master plan. Whyte was going to knock out Povetkin, and then he would likely fight Joshua. They had already fought once. They dislike each other strongly. Their first fight was a good fight, if you ever saw it. Whyte even buzzed Joshua pretty badly, but Joshua knocked him out. So then when Povetkin knocked Whyte out with that perfect left uppercut, that messed everything up, and they had a rematch clause. See, so whoever was thinking ahead was thinking ahead. So just in case that happened, because see, Whyte has shown some flaws later in the fight where he'd been knocked down, and Joseph Parker almost knocked him out in the 12th round in their first fight. So they were thinking ahead there. See, to me, this is a huge fight because I look at it kind of because I like the drama of the whole thing. Charles nailed it. So same way I'm looking at it. This is huge for these guys. Now, we might not think it's big for fans, but see, I think it is because of the drama. You lose, you're pretty much done, in my book. So Whyte is a younger guy by 9 years. He's 32, and Povetkin is 41. I think if Povetkin loses, he says, I've had a great career. I was even a champion, whatever, of one of something for a while, and then my steroid issues and whatever. He's had a good champion, a good run, gold Olympic champion and all that stuff. That's cool. Whyte is another story because I think he's been overrated from the beginning. I haven't been that impressed with the guy. I love how frank the guy is. Sorry, Frank. No, I meant it as a compliment. He's very honest and very witty, and I love that. But his talent has never reached his mouth. So to me, I'm really looking forward to this because I like the human side of it, where you got 2 guys who, like Charles said, you got 2 guys fighting for their futures in a sense, and one would probably, like I said, lose and right away with, well, I gave it my best shot at 41. The other one feels like he hasn't done it all, and even if he loses, Whyte would probably not want to be done. And then of course he got knocked out brutally. So where's psychologically, what's happened to that with all the delays and everything? Yeah, that was annoying, but Povetkin got COVID and all this stuff, so you can't really help that. But I think there's a lot going into this, and I'm going to be tuned in, waiting very impatiently for this one to start.
Well, it kind of reminds me, in an odd way, remember when we were enamored, I don't know if enamored is the right word, but we were looking at Valuev and saying, wouldn't it be interesting if this guy became relevant, champion, something? It's kind of the way I look at these two. It's like, Povetkin makes a difference in that he's 41 years old. He's doing it from, he was a champion. He's doing it from outside the circle of where we're getting heavyweight champions from now. And Whyte is like, if he's actually the deal, he can clean out the division rather easily. Because, as we said, we've got older guys, we have less skilled guys, we have this, we have that. He seems to be in shape, ready to go. If he ends up becoming who he can become, he can wipe this out and be champion for quite some time. So I look at it in that it's an interesting way of what the future could be. But as you both said, I don't think it's going to get there. But it will be interesting to see, Povetkin sitting at the top going, all right, somebody come knock me off. You got about 6 months before I'm too old to fight anybody else. And for Whyte to go, hey, I'm a champion now. Maybe that is a boost in confidence or whatever. Let me go. I'm not going to, as you said, he's pretty frank. Man, I'm not going to go dodge people. I'm going to go pick and choose who I want, or not pick and choose who I want. I'm going to go after the next person. I'll fight Ortiz. Well, he probably wouldn't say that. But I'll go get this guy. I'll go get that, and let's go take care of business. So,
well, he had a chance. Yeah. Remember, Frank, he had a chance to fight Ortiz, but he passed on that.
Yeah, I remember that as it was coming out of my mouth. Right.
That was funny. Sorry.
No, you're right. Well, Charles, as we're looking at how we attack the next few weeks, because we know we're waiting for the Canelo fight. But what else makes you go, all right, we still have some boxing going on that I'm interested in. What else is coming up that you like?
Lomachenko, Nakatani. I like to see that. I think that's a good way for Lomachenko to try to come back. Lomachenko to try to come back. Nakatani's with 19-1, 13 KOs, has a Japanese background. Opportunity for him to kind of show if he's the real deal. And Lomo needs a good fight to kind of show, hey, I ran into a buzzsaw young guy, whatever was going on with me that time. I'm okay now. I'm back. All right. I'm still Lomo. Don't you guys get it ever twisted. I'm back. So I think that's a good fight for him if he can come back. And if he's not the real deal, we'll find out. And then if you look at it with Nakatani, an opportunity for a young guy to rise up and get his name out there, get into the mix. So I'm looking at that too. And I'm gonna jump off this real quick, but I was watching the interview with my boy Brian Custer, and he had Jamal Charlo on. And I'm gonna tell you, I'm not really pumping up other people, but somebody has pissed Jamal Charlo off because he came out and he says, "You guys are looking at certain things, and I'm telling you, I'll fight any damn body. He said, I'm chasing Canelo. We was at 154, I'm chasing him 160. Now I'm chasing him 168. What the hell do I need to do?" And they kept asking me questions. As I get off this, he says, "Tell you what, y'all talking about all these people and everybody, I'll fight anybody." They mentioned Benavidez. He says he hadn't done anything. Went on route, but he said, "You know what? I tell you what, where in the hell is Triple G at? Where's he at?" And I was like,
picking on the old man.
He was like, "Where's Triple G at? He's hiding somewhere. I'll fight him." And I'm like, yes. That's what I want to see. Let's get it on. Triple G, come to the table, please.
There's only one fighter he won't fight, and that's his twin brother, right? Well, and you mentioned Lomo and Nakatani, and just as a personal note, I don't want to see anything about that because the other Nakatani, when we were talking about horse racing, has not done well for us. So let's just leave that one alone, okay?
No, you did not. You didn't go there.
Nakatani has not been my friend. John, what are you looking forward to?
He did. Well, the Jackal's going to be fighting here in a week. That ought to be fun. Going for probably his last title, and he's fighting. Joe Smith is fighting a tough Russian, and he's another story that I like. This is a hard-scrabble kid from New York. Worked a full-time job for years, and I'd love to see him as a champion so he can say he's a champ.
Right.
So I'm looking forward to that. Boots Enos is fighting again. He's intriguing. He doesn't get nearly the ink that Garcia and Haney get, and Enos is a very quiet guy. But that Charlo, I saw that with Charlo. I have to say something. That was I like that because I think he'll fight anybody. I do, and a fight with Benavidez would be intriguing. And they were talking about Triple G fighting Benavidez. Triple G's under Eddie. Yeah, Eddie Hearn has got Triple G now. So I don't want to throw that much on Triple G because one, he's old. So of course I like him. He's 39, but I don't know. I think they're still. I think they're holding out for Canelo. I do. I think Eddie Hearn is thinking that they're going to get that big, massive payday one more time, and that's it. And he's got a belt, and that's all Canelo said is, "Look, I want another belt." And he's got it. I do. But he needs to fight somebody. He fought, a while ago, won, and everyone was like, yeah. I mean, he looked pretty good. But, yeah, I don't blame Charlo. I mean, Charlo, and we've said this a million times, we're going to keep saying it. Charlo and Andre seem like they're always on the outside looking in.
Right.
And I think Canelo and Triple G and those guys, they're real fighters. I think they want to fight, but I don't. Some of the time, I just don't understand why it doesn't happen. And Canelo has fought some really tough guys in his career. Some guys he's possibly avoided. I'm not sure, but he's fought guys that nobody wanted him to fight, and he's fought them. So you got to give him that, right? But we all want him and Charlo in there. That's what we want. We all want to see him fight a super athletic, in his prime guy instead of an over-the-hill guy. Billy Joe Saunders, who's had 2 fights in 3 years, and God knows what he's doing right now. He wasn't even training a few weeks ago. So you want to see a prime guy against a prime Canelo. That's what we want to see. And as I said last time, Canelo did mention Charlo, so I think he's aware of the comments by us that he needs to fight him. So Charlo needs to keep doing what he's doing. Remember, we said that before. Charlo needs to be a little more controversial, and he's doing it, and that's good. So keep it up.
Okay, now we're just about, depending upon your time frame here, a year into the pandemic and when things went away. Now, we were in the midst of doing shows at that point, and we weren't sure what in the heck was going to happen. But we kept plugging away, which is good for us, maybe because we had everything else to do, I don't know. But good for the people also who have been listening to what we have to say. But let's look at this in a little bit of, all right, in a year when there was less activity in the boxing world than there normally is, what fights or boxers or whatever stood out to you that made you remember this last year a little bit more than just we were inside? Was there any fighter or any particular fight that we had happen? You know, we had a lot of them happen in the bubble, you know, but anyone that stood out to you and went, all right, this was a good year for someone at least. Charles, anyone jump out at you?
I mean, I can go low hanging fruit, of course. You know, when you looked at, you know, with the way that Lomachenko lost, right? So, you know, you look at Lopez, you can say that too. But I'm gonna say this is gonna surprise you. Somehow or another, this guy found a way to make it a great year for him. And as much as I've been clowning him and criticizing him allegedly about his decisions, he came out smelling like a rose, and he doing what the hell he wanted to do. That's Canelo. I'm not mad at that. Canelo came out, he got rid of the baggage of the controversy about the company over his head, people telling him what to do. He became his own man, became independent, became his own company, and he's fighting. And granted, it may not be the guys I want him to fight, that we want him to fight, but he's coming out, he's fighting. He went to Miami, people love him. I mean, the dude is, hey, love him or hate him, I'm gonna say this: whoever's working with him now, and his folks have done a masterful job putting him in front of everybody. He is loved by many. He's doing the right thing. So if I had one guy that I would say I'm gonna give him his love as far as promotion and taking care of his brand, it's Canelo. Even though I want to see him fight some damn body, but overall, as far as the masterful play that they did, I'll give it to Canelo.
Okay, good. John?
Well, as far as stories go, I mean, I love the comeback that we just spoke about Errol Spence made, you know, when he beat Danny Garcia. I thought that was great. I love that. I love people that come back like that. But last year really was Charles stole it. Last year was Lopez, Teofimo Lopez. I mean, he did something that I didn't think he could do, that most people didn't think he could do. He beat Lomachenko. It was close, but he beat him. I don't. Some people might complain about it, but I don't. I watched it 3 times now. Lopez won that fight, mostly because of, well, we know why. Lomo didn't start going. Lomo is dying for a rematch. Probably never get it, but Davis and Santa Cruz, that fight was a barn burner, and I think it just made both of them look better than they. I don't know if that's possible, but especially with Leo. But that was a really good fight. But yeah, Canelo, you know, he I wish he would fight. I mean, he's fought Danny Jacobs, who's really good, and he knocked out an older Kovalev. But we do want to see him fight the top guys, because that's what boxing is always supposed to be about. The best fighting the best, not fighting the guy ranked 10th or ranked 9th, 1-1, blah, 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 where we really think he's got a legitimate shot to lose. Now, that's what happened when he fought Triple G, and I actually do think he did lose one of those fights, but it doesn't matter. You know, he was a draw on a split decision, so that tells you how close they were. But you know, that was, it was a weird year, but we did have some examples, and I'm sure I'm forgetting some things that that fight, the fight of the year, the knockout of the year, Baranchek, and I'm forgetting the guy's name. He got knocked out in the 5th round. They knocked each other. There were 8 knockdowns in that fight.
Yeah, right.
That was incredible. And then I think, he did, and Charles's guy continuing his comeback forget the Estrada fight, Gonzalez. I think he had one fight 2020, and just an amazing story. It shows you the dedication that these guys do and the moxie that they have. But I think it was, considering we did have some memorable moments in 2020.
Well, I've got two of them, and they're going to be completely different ends of the spectrum. One, Oscar Valdez, because that was a fight that I don't know that normal people that know anything about anything or know nothing about anything, the belt holder's Vergil. I mean, he's the guy that's been pumped up. He's the guy that's got this. He's got everybody behind him. Blah, blah. Valdez came out and dominated that fight. I was in shock because to tell you the truth, I hadn't seen him do anything before, And even though I hadn't seen Vergil, I also knew he was supposed to be the next up-and-coming guy. Now, if I'd done my research a little bit greater, which you know I don't do much of that, if I'd done a little bit better job of that, maybe I would have known a little bit more. But that's not the guy we were supposed to be watching. And he came out and jumped off the screen. It's like, oh my goodness. And I think he set himself up for something down the road that could be very, very impressive. And the other thing, and this is going to shock both of you because I usually try not to badmouth it, I appreciate what has been going on or what they're going to do or how they held on by their fingernails by DAZN. Because let's face it, this is a company built on boxing that went away or should have went away because there was no boxing. They've been able to do a little bit here, a little bit there, and Charles is like, I can't believe you even mentioned them in his. But they've been able to do a little bit here, a little bit there, and to keep themselves afloat, and to be able to provide us with something in the form of boxing entertainment. It may not be what we signed on for. It may not be what we expected it to be, but there still looks like there may be a future there. And a lot of companies like this could have went away and could have given us nothing. They still tried. I'm going to give them the A for effort. They still tried. Is it what I wanted from my $10, $20 a month, or whatever the hell it was? I don't know. But they still made an effort. I think they made a better effort than a lot of people that are in the boxing business. Obviously, HBO jumped out of the boxing business, Showtime has been showing a little bit here and there, more of the live stuff, but you don't get a lot of the replays. The PBC collection on Fox is like, you're going to show the same fight again? We've seen this 12 times this week, So at least they're making an effort. And I'm saying this because they're suing me. No, I'm just kidding. But it's the idea of the concept of what it was, they've remained fluid, and they've changed kind of what they were supposed to be into what they can be. So I'm going to give them some credit. They lost some big name people. They did this, they did that. But as Charles says, if they just bring Richard Schaefer back, I think they'll be in great shape. So.
Well, can I say something, Charles? Frank, real fast. Charles was talking about Canelo, who's been running his career basically in a way has been Canelo and Eddie Hearn. Mm-hmm. And Canelo complimented Eddie Hearn, and it was a shot at Oscar when he said Eddie was the best promoter in the game. And I was like, ouch. But he knows what he's doing, and he's real happy. So that's DAZN again, right? Yeah. And I have to say that was an excellent pick with Oscar Valdez, but I was ending my thinking up to December 31st, 2020, Frank. So, I loved what Valdez did was incredible. That was one of the best stories, again, that I've seen in a long time. Thankfully, Vergil wasn't hurt badly by that knockout. But, that's a very good choice on your part.
Well, to me, the whole world went away this week, basically, of maybe last week of last year. And then everything because this is when I think we realized this isn't going to be a 2-week thing. This is going to be a lot longer than we thought. Yeah. So, Charles, you were about to say something.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Ladies and gentlemen, I have no one making an announcement. Just like, like we have that Wendy's commercial with the bag alert. I want to tell you that Frank Gordon just made a DAZN subscriber promo alert.
Wow.
I will drop the pen.
should be on national TV, and they should pay you for that. Because look, that clearly was someone who's a subscriber. I'm not.
No, I was a subscriber. I'm not anymore. I was. I will open it back up again later. Well, it's also subscriber. Yeah. It's also this is also he's searching for sponsors. Yeah.
But I mean, I'm glad you said that. I want Canelo as a sponsor. You see
yeah. For sure.
Okay, and it made me think of something else too. All right, we, amongst other things, we, with this limbo we've been in, and I've noticed in the pictures behind both of you and the books and everything, we've lost a few people, but it's not just that. It's we're hanging on to things. I think I'm trying to figure out the best way to word this. I think boxing has always been nostalgic. But I think it's been even more so in the last year because we've been forced to go back, and as we've done on the show, going back and looking at previous fights, previous fighters, previous genres of the way the sport worked, of the stuff that we went back and did, or other stuff. What have you rediscovered discovered that maybe you didn't really, I don't know, either take seriously or didn't realize it was as good or as bad as you remember? John?
Well, this isn't so much me, maybe a little, but, and you're talking about people dying and things, when the Marvelous one died, one that was shocking,
yeah.
It reminded me a little bit, even though Marvin was 66, and the two guys that I thought of when I heard the story were younger. Roberto Clemente won when his plane went down on New Year's. He was 38. I was just... And then when Pistol Pete, dropped dead of a heart attack at 40 when he was playing a pickup game, I know Marvin Hagler, but Marvin Hagler was one of those guys that, you figured that when the Grim Reaper showed up, he was going to say, "You see this? You get the hell out of here." And the Grim Reaper would have said, "Okay, okay." You just didn't think that it was going to happen to him like that. So, the way I can connect this, Frank, is that even me a little bit, the love shown towards Hagler was touching. But he's it almost reminded me of a great artist or a writer that people don't appreciate when they're alive. And you know this, when they die, then people go, "Wow, I didn't realize how good this guy was." And that was what a lot was going on with Hagler. It happened with Edgar Allan Poe. People think he was famous all the time. Not really when he was alive. It was after he died that people respected him. But and I think it was the same with Hagler, because he was a hard-scrabble guy, again, another one of those guys. But I saw more comments on social media like, "Wow, I didn't realize how good this guy was." And so I didn't really need to watch it again, but I did watch a few of it, and I didn't go, "Wow." I just went, "Yeah, he was just so damn good." Probably the greatest middleweight who ever lived, as far as that goes. Tough as nails. So that's kind of answering your question, I hope. But that's been one of those things in the last month that just, you talk about nostalgia again, Frank. That's boxing. You're right, and that brought it all back, as far as I was concerned, into a complete circle where you're like, yeah, you love it, but then again, you forget, and then you're reminded, unfortunately, by a tragedy, and it's like, man, really a bummer.
Charles?
Yeah, I would concur about Hagler and so many others, even with Leon Spinks. You kind of go back and go, you really don't have an opportunity to really assess how great they were or what it meant at the time, what they did. And I think even to that fact that with this pandemic going on and realizing that us having the ability to go back and look at some of those older fights because there was not so much action going on at the time, really brought to the surface how great those fights really were and how much that we long for the current state of boxing to rise up with its talent to give us some memorable fights. Because going back and looking at the stuff, when you looking back, you mentioned about when we had, we talked about focusing on Henry Armstrong. When you had a chance to really look back at that and see how great a fighter he was and so many others, Ray Robinson, and guys that just had heart like unbelievable fighters, and they may not have won and stayed champions for a long time, but their heart, their desire, the blood, sweat, and tears, and just saying, you know what, the hell with it. I'm going to come out here and give you the best performance possible, and I'll fight anybody. I think, to me, us doing these things in the past year has really brought that to the forefront. And I just hope that more of these, again, modern-day fighters and these promoters wake the hell up and give us something to remember, because people, as much as people want to say boxing is dying, UFC is trying to make a move, there's enough bouts and talent out there to let boxing rise again if you just let the guys fight.
Good point. Good point. I have one of the shows that we did that I won't call it a throwaway because it was very important to a lot of things, but I don't think that the viewership and the people that paid attention to what we do paid much attention to this. Iran Barkley, Roberto Duran.
Mm-hmm.
Having watched that fight for the first time since it was aired on CBS Sports Spectacular or whatever it was, and knowing the story of Roberto Duran. Now, let's forget Iran Barkley for just a second. But our perception of Roberto Duran at that time, and maybe even after that, we don't seem to remember the Ken Buchanan fight. We don't seem to remember the first Sugar Ray Leonard fight. We remember the Nomos fight. And we remember him ballooning up 100 pounds after that. And in the interim of all that. We don't remember him almost being broke and being out of shape. We don't remember that. We tend not to even remember this fight in the legacy of Roberto Duran. And then when you see him actually get into shape and to will himself to a win over a guy who was at that time pretty darn good.
Mm-hmm.
And to get a win out of that fight. And then now when you see pictures, we mentioned the Hagler, we mentioned a few other people, we start to see these pictures on the internet at these events where, you know, the old retired boxers are. And Duran pops up, smiling, full of life, with a drink in his hand, a cigar usually. And here and there, and you go, okay, we may have thought of him as the villain, but this guy is just loving life. He did what he wanted to do, and he managed to put on one hell of a fight. Several great fights, but this one fight in particular, we looked at him like, that made me feel good. That was a great fight. And to take nothing away from Iran Barkley, but when we called this fight, or we were talking about it, we always used he to mention Duran. We very rarely went, Duran just stood out. He just jumped off the screen, even though it was a heck of a fight. So that, to me, of all the things that we've done, that's one of the ones that just jumped out at me and made me go, wow. And then also when we paired the Zale Graziano fight with the Hagler-Hearns fight, that was just, I want to thank myself for having the intelligence to listen to someone else for a change and to say, hey, here's a good idea. Let's run with this. Because it
gave decision, Frank.
Yeah, hey, I don't run this company for nothing, I just didn't inherit this thing. I actually had to work at it. But the idea of what we came up with to say, this is pretty cool. We got to see, because I don't know if we understand just by thinking about it, these are the same weight classes. Black and white color, a long ways apart, but these are the same weight classes. And we got to see it, boom, 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 boom. I thought that was pretty cool. So those are the two things of a lot of stuff that we looked at. Those are the two things that jumped out at me and made me think, wow, this was pretty neat. Now, for those of you who don't know, I have been going back and not archiving the website, but redesigning the website. And of course, it just crashed last night when I was doing it. But going back and looking at all the stuff that we've put together in the last year plus, going back to 2019, actually. If you're watching this show now, go back and look at the other stuff. Back when the graphics sucked and we couldn't keep ourselves on the screen and somebody's screen was darker than the other one and it was just one Zoom call and we had no idea what we were doing and we talked over each other. We had no clue what was going on. We still had fun doing it, And I think it comes across to you guys. So we've been gone for the last 2 weeks because of technical glitches that were supposed to be resolved today, and maybe they were, maybe they weren't. But to a man, we all said, I miss doing this. You know, I think we would have done it even if we couldn't have recorded it, based on what we did before we started the show. So if you're watching now, tell somebody else. Go back and look. I'm not sure what he's doing there. Is a parakeet about to attack you? What's going on?
No, so what you talking about, Frank Gordon?
Oh, okay. So as a wrap up, which I was trying to do, and it took me 3 minutes to do it, I want to thank those of you that have stuck with us for the last year, because it's been tough on everybody, and I'm not sure that it's getting any easier, but we're learning how to survive and adapt. So we're going to be here, even if it means we take a week or two where we have to figure out everything. We're going to be here, and we've got more fights to look at. We've got new fights and old fights and upcoming fights and all kinds of stuff. So I'm not going to wrap it up. Charles, wrap it up, or at least wrap up your end of it.
Ladies and gentlemen, again, we want to thank you for tuning in, watching For Our Foolishness. You know, I'm on medication, so you never know what you're going to see over here. So but we want to thank you for participating and watching. We enjoy what we do. So appreciate you. Till next time.
John, take us home.
Yeah, I hope people can feel the respect and the joy. I would use that word, guys, joy, that we get out of doing this. Even with the technical glitches, I won't point fingers, Frank, but we just have
fingers, but that's another thing.
We just have a blast. I've said this before, but I would say it again, and it isn't meant to be as like, wow, he did a few more boxing shows. It isn't like that. You guys have done all kinds of things. It's just, this is the most enjoyable boxing program that I've ever been part of, and I'm just very grateful to be part of it. It's so fun. It's so, even though Frank scripts everything, you know, people don't realize that, but we, you know, he's a control freak over there. But we still make it fun. And we're grateful, even if our audience is pretty low or whatever, even though it's grown a little bit, I got to say that. We are still grateful to everyone who watches, and hopefully we could put a smile on your face and possibly you learn something. And that's really, really what we're trying to do. And with showing the older guys, that's the only way you really learn about anything, is you go back and study it and you compare it to now and you go, oh, okay, so that's where I get it now. So if you learn something and chuckle a little bit, then that makes our entire year.
And if you thought the show was good, you should see what it looks like in rehearsal.
Really.
All right, people, thank you very much. We'll be back, Internet Gremlins willing, next week, and thanks again.